Let's see. What you mentioned you teach a class on self-publishing. Rather than me trying to think up the best things to ask you about, what are some of the biggest points that you try to make when you teach that class that maybe viewers and listeners could benefit from?
Some of the things we talked about already, but I think in other things, trying to, I think the professionalism is an important piece, and really looking at the holistic. If you're talking about specifically about self-publishing, really looking at the entirety of what you're doing, and not just thinking about writing the book, and not just thinking that that's the end of the line. So you are the publisher. Like it's almost obvious, but sometimes people forget to look at it that way, that it's you're the person that's taking the place of the traditional publishing company. So all the things that they would do, you want to try to mirror those, maybe not exactly the way they're doing it, but the same types of issues. So the marketing and the editing and the covers, all of that. I think too often people just try to do it as a side hobby. And that, again, back to the knowing your why, that may be fine for what you're trying to do, but if that's not what you're trying to do, you really have to be very intentional about making it as high quality as you can. I think that's important. And then there's a lot of other on my website. I've got a list some of the tools and the companies I use. So like I use Ingram Spark along with Amazon with KDP Print for all the paperbacks I do, and I have them in hardcover. And I think trying to use, there's one of the greatest things that's changed since I started doing this even 6 years ago, is there's a lot more tools that make it easier, and there's so many more resources out there that you can find a clear overview of some of the best practices that you can do, whereas 5 or 6 years ago you kind of had to hunt for it in the weeds a little bit more. So you're taking advantage of those services that exist, whether you're going wide and using services like Draft to Digital, or you're trying to use just like things like ACX to do your audiobooks. I use some software that I bought called Vellum, which works really well if you have a Mac. So instead of paying formatters to format my ebooks and my print books, I bought the software one time, and it takes me about 15 minutes to format any book that I'm doing. I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world, and it looks really, really good. So like things like that. I use BookFunnel a lot to do all my advanced reader copies, which is extremely affordable. And it's a great way to send links out there for people to get ebooks without having to do some convoluted side loading, and find ways to get them out to your advanced reader list, or if you're trying to give away books. So taking advantage of services like that have come up over the years are really important. And the other thing I'd say is, listening to podcasts. I think I always say I've gotten kind of my master's in publishing over the years from listening to podcasts. There's a handful of podcasts out there, like the Self-Publishing Podcast and Joanna Penn's podcast, and a lot of other ones, that some of which have kind of come and gone. But there's a lot of great ones that the Sell More Book Show I listen to every week just to get the latest news in publishing. And
Oh, I never missed the Sell More Book Show or the Creative Pen.
yeah, so I mean, those are great resources. So whenever I'm in the car and I don't have the kids with me, I'm usually listening to a podcast. And you can, and this is obviously another great one now that I'm listening to yours. So a lot of ways to stay informed, and that's part of the whole running your efforts like a business and being professional about it. You have to stay in the know about what's happening in the industry. And if something like, for me, like Vellum came along, it's like, oh, this looks easy, this is great. I saw some examples of how it formatted things, and that takes away one extra step where I had to pay people and get the files the right way. And now it's effortless, and it gives me a lot more flexibility to do it myself. So it just makes it easier, which I think didn't always exist 5 or 6 years ago, which I appreciate too. And I think that's something that someone, whether you're starting or have done it a little while, you can really afford yourself some benefits by being familiar with those types of things, and using the new tools that come out and exist, and staying informed, to try to make things go as smoothly as you can.
Let me make this kind of my final question because I know we're coming up on 2 hours and both of us have been coughing a bit and are going to talk ourselves hoarse. But a question I always like to ask is, what is the one piece of advice you wish that somebody had given you 6 years ago when you first started?
That's a great question. You know, I guess I would probably say I wish that someone had. I figured out the indie publishing thing a little bit by accident and by myself, and I think knowing, and that's why when I talk to people, I try to, not that it's the right thing for everyone, but I try to kind of evangelize a little bit about indie publishing, because especially in children's book world, it's not as well known and it's not as well accepted. So I think knowing that there are multiple paths to be able to get out there and get your words into the world is a really good thing to know. And it may not be the right thing for you to do, but the fact that the possibility exists without kind of the gatekeepers that have always been there for hundreds of years is a huge thing. So I think fully understanding the list of options of what you have, it's kind of like someone going off and they're finishing high school, knowing, okay, you may want to go to this kind of college, you may want to go get a job, you may want to take a year off, you may want to go to a junior a 2-year college. There's a lot of options, and knowing which one is the best for you based on what you're trying to accomplish. And that's changed a lot over the years, even from when we went off to school, that's changed a lot in the industry. So the more you can be aware of just what opportunities exist, I think that's really valuable for people, and that's one of the things whenever I get a chance to talk to people. Like I said, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I think there's great folks that are obviously doing amazing things in the traditional route, and it's something I've kicked around about. Would it be beneficial to me to kind of have a foot in that water as well, just to get some of the other benefits that maybe you don't have? So it's not good or bad. It's just a matter of knowing what's the right fit for what you're trying to do. So that's probably what I wish I understood a little bit more in the beginning, that I kind of found by accident, that I hope other people realize a little bit more as they're kind of stumbling into it.
Well, just because you go indie now doesn't mean you're always going to be indie. There will still be opportunities, and God knows I occasionally chat with editors, and we'll see if one of those things ever pans out. I don't have any skin in the fight as far as I don't swear allegiance to publishing models. I don't care if you traditionally publish, if you self-publish, however you publish, so long as you're happy, you're creating books that are worthy of readers' time, and the readers are happy. I think that's all gravy. That's fantastic, which is why I'll go from an episode like we had here Tuesday with literary agent Jennifer March Soloway. I'm talking with you today. I'll be talking with some traditional authors. I'll be talking with some more indie authors. I just want to know what makes authors tick, and what's going to be successful. And this has been just a great conversation. I'm going to have to go back and write down some of the things that you said and listen to it a couple of times through to Crockett's fullness, because there's just a lot of great tips over a relatively short period of time. Stephen, remind esteemed audience where they can find out more about you online and where they can stalk you on social media.
Yeah, so my website is stephenksmith.net, and I'm on Twitter at StephenKSmith1, and Facebook and Instagram is Stephen K. Smith Author. So those are probably the best ways to track me down, and I've got links on there about things for writers, about publishing. There's links on there about school visits and all my books. So that's probably the best way to find me.
And as always, you can find more interviews with authors, publishing professionals, all kinds of great folks, as well as information about me at middlegradeninja.com. Make sure you download your free ebook of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees so that you're ready for Banneker Bones and the Alligator People coming very soon. Stephen, we've got a sign-off phrase I've been asking the guests to say. It's in keeping with the ninja theme of the show. That sign-off phrase is hi-ya and what have you. Will you sign us off?
Sure. Hi-ya and what have you.